UFO crash in Aurora, Texas by Charles Nader. And last week's one, we looked at news. Charles Nader. And last week's one, we looked at news. Investigator interviews in some of the cases even one of them. In the April 19, 1897 edition of the Dallas Morning News, according to Hayden, on April 17 at 6 a.m., the early risers of Aurora were astonished at the sudden appearance of the airship, which has been sailing through the country. As most readers are probably aware, articles describing mystery airships have been appearing in newspapers throughout the U.S. at this time. Hayden described the Aurora ship as possibly having had mechanical problems, as it was only traveling about 10 or 12 miles per hour and gradually settled toward the Earth. According to Hayden, after passing over the town square, it crashed into a windmill on the property of Judge Proctor in the north of town. It is described as exploding, scattering debris of several acres of ground, wrecking the windmill and water tank, and destroying the judge's flower garden. It is reported that there was a single pilot whose remains were badly disfigured, but enough of the original was being picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world. According to Hayden, T.J. Weems, the local U.S. Signal Service operator and authority on astronomy, gave his opinion that the pilot was from Mars. The strewn metal was said to have been several tons worth of aluminum and silver. The town is described as being full of people viewing the wreck and gathering specimens of the strange metal from the debris. The funeral for the pilot was reported to be scheduled for the next day. APRO's investigation into the case is described in the article headlined "The Aurora, Texas Case" on the front page of the May 2, 1973 issue of the APRO Bulletin. After summing up the story, Aurora is described as having been in pitiful straits in 1896 and 1897 due to a spotted fever epidemic, the failure of the cotton crop, and the fact that the railroad had bypassed the town. Hayden is described as being a cotton buyer and as bad a fix as anyone else. The March 12, 1973 issue of Time magazine has an article on the case, and 86-year-old Etta Peggs is quoted as saying that Hayden wrote the article as a joke to bring interest to Aurora. The railroad bypassed us, and the town was dying. According to the Bulletin, the Aurora story lay dormant for 70 years, until it was brought up again by UFO researchers during the furor of the 1966 flap when the Condon Committee was commissioned to investigate UFO reports. Historians in the area called the story a hoax, and a scientist, Dr. Alfred E. Krauss, swept the area with a metal detector and interviewed people there who were alive in 1897, and he found nothing to substantiate the story. Addressing the 1973 investigation, Hughes, we presume because he is not mentioned by name, is described as a UFO buff who has a reputation as a gadfly.
Looking for an easier way to lose weight?
headline, Texas woman recalls UFO crash in 1897. In the May 31st, 1973 Los Angeles Herald Examiner quotes 91-year-old Mary Evans as saying she remembered the excitement caused by the crash, but her parents wouldn't let her go to the site. It is reported in the bulletin that the aluminum found at the site was a fairly common aluminum alloy. According to former Project Blue Book scientific consultant J. Allen Hynek, the newest scientist who had tested a sample in Canada, it's pointed out that the local historical society hadn't recorded the event, that the aluminum alloy showed up after Krause's 1967 investigation, that the only Weems in the area was a blacksmith, not a U.S. Secret Service operator, and that two people claiming to remember the crash each sent investigators to separate grave sites. The determination by APRO was that it seems certain that we should relegate the story of the 1897 Aurora, Texas airship crash to the hoax bin. Charles Lear is the author of The Flying Saucer Investigators, available at Amazon.com.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4 are effective as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio.
At Cigna Healthcare, we're designing a better way for you to get better care, and that starts with being there to support you around the clock. When you call or text, we'll always answer with 24/7 access to mental health clinicians, and we'll call you too, with a 100% follow-up rate to make sure you have everything you need. Whatever works best for you, works best for us. We're really just here to help you get better. That's better by design. Learn more at Cigna.com/better.
Treat yourself to a culinary delight at the Wild Rose, South Jordan's premier fine dining destination in the District Shopping Center. Indulge in our contemporary American dishes, featuring the finest cuts of meat and freshest fish, enhanced by our unique, classically inspired sauces, magic, specialty cocktails, selection of our extensive wines, and highlighting the music live music on Wild Rose is perfect for any occasion. Wild Rose, refined fine dining outlets.
Statements and opinions about guests on Mysterious Radio are to be considered as endorsed by sponsors or affiliated networks.
National Geographic Guide to the world's supernatural places. I want to thank you, Sarah, for joining me tonight on Mysterious Radio.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for your time. I know you're very busy, and you've written a ton of books on subjects such as tarot, astrology, psychic powers, to name a few. But what grabbed your attention about the supernatural aspects of our world?
I think it's because it hadn't really been covered before, actually. There's quite a lot of books about sacred places or places where you can go and get spiritually enlightened and stuff like that. But no one had really touched on things like vampires or I mean, there are lots of books on haunted places, but they become very specific. And so this was a general kind of chopping up a few themes like, witchcraft, and there's where people can just dip in. And I think it's that dipping in aspect of this book, which is why it's so good, because it's illustrated. You can just open a few pages and you find something immediately which grabs your attention, either through the images or through the text. And so it does cover, well, I try and cover the whole world, it does expand your mind to what is actually out there. And also the fact that there is something else, whether we call it supernatural or spiritual or another world or whatever you want to call it, there's something else which is a mystery. And I think that the supernatural aspect of that is what makes it a kind of nice kit of places to go and visit if you're so inclined as well.
Throughout the world, so you did a great job in that. Now, right now you're in France, and I'm wondering if you can share with us your thoughts about, or their thoughts of the supernatural in that country.
Yes, it's interesting because I think France, like a lot of other countries in Europe, have a specific kind of past based on lots of superstitions and religions and changes in a different way from, I would say, the United States, which is based on more the native Americans, or South America, about the kind of indigenous peoples, and Africa. And in Europe, I think the history has been so fraught and changed all the time that things like witches became, a great way to kind of get women to be kind of put into a certain place by religious certain authorities, for example. And so the French particularly are very, very superstitious. Now, of course, also in France, there are a couple of places which have been found which are incredibly ancient. The caves of Lascaux, for example, which go back, hundreds of thousands of years. And so there's an ancient heritage, which I suppose has been found because the people who inhabit France and England and Germany and all the other European countries were people principally who wanted to explore and discover things. So it's in our psyche, it's in our nature in Europe to go out and try and find things. That's why they sent people around the world, sort of exploring the world. It isn't necessarily in the psyche, the general psyche of a South American indigenous person, because A, he doesn't have the resources, and B, he just reacts to a superstition or to a divine calling, which the Europeans didn't often have. So it was about curiosity. And I think that's why in France the French are A, very curious, B, they just want to discover the truth. They want to know things. They want to explain. They want to measure it. Whereas in other countries, it's much more just accepted. So in France here, we have a lot of superstition. We have a lot of curiosity. And although I'm English through and through, England and France have been in a kind of a relationship for thousands of years, and we sort of understand that there's this sort of something about our past which we need to bring together. And we find it in the divine, in symbols, in things which are sacred, in the whole witchcraft industry, as I will call it, because I think that's what it was in the medieval times. You know, where anything pagan or anything ancient was considered to be, you know, unacceptable. So France today, although it's very political and very kind of into, you know, everything social and all that stuff, it's still a country which, at its roots, is very, very, very superstitious.
That's interesting. I had no idea that they were so superstitious over there. Now, if you were to talk to someone about a haunting that they are experiencing, some people just shut down and they don't want to talk about it openly, but are they open to discuss things like that over there?
Oh yeah, I think people are. They're much more willing to kind of try and either rationalise it. That's the sort of Descartes viewpoint, you know, the sort of philosophical viewpoint at which France is so famous for, or they will kind of try and explain it through a religious way. But I think there's a third way now, which is that this whole thing that haunted houses, places, whatever, are really where a lost soul is trying to resolve some earthly problem. And I think, you know, that it's kind of gives an atmosphere to the place. I don't know, and a lot of Europe, I don't know about in the States, but when people are tragically killed in a road accident or something, there's always a kind of little sign left there that someone, you know, the soul departed this place exactly here. And so you drive along. I mean, there's some very long straight roads in France, believe it or not. And you drive.
I've been there actually.
Yeah. And there's these kind of little crosses and cemeteries and God knows what all along the road where people are being killed because there are only, you know, 2 lanes and people drive recklessly too. You get this feeling as you drive down these roads that of a kind of atmosphere of this is a very haunted place. And so the same thing happens in castles, in chateaus, in big houses, and it's obviously worldwide as well. But I do feel that if you believe in or want to imagine that there is another life or an afterlife or an in-between life, then people who have not resolved something on earth, they're stuck in this limbo, and often it incarnates in a strange spiritual way in the place that they departed. So this is why modern day psychoanalysts and dream therapists and that side of the whole dilemma about haunting and ghosts and, you know, wraiths and God knows what, simply say that this is about unfinished business. And once the unfinished business becomes finished, then the soul can depart to the next stage of its journey. So that's another way of looking at it as well. And that's a big subject and a big way of a belief system in many different cultures and civilizations, indigenous ones too, throughout the world. So, you know, although I'm in France, I feel it very strongly here. But, you know, I think wherever you are, if you are somebody who can pick up on that kind of psychic energy, you'll feel it wherever you are.
You talk about you have 250 locations in this book. I want to know how you went about choosing those locations.
Well, to be very honest, it was a question of trying to find a balance between different countries or continents, understanding what people are fascinated by, really, you know, and putting it all together. So it was between me, it wasn't just me, it was between me and the editors to decide on the final 250. Now, you know, we could have done 500, we could have done 1,000, but you know, when you're working into a format and a book, you have to sort of think about what people can take in, how much they can read, and so on. And also it comes down to costings. I mean, I would have loved to have gone and visited all 250 places, but it would have taken me probably, you know, 5 years to do that. Or maybe more. And you know, when you're writing something, unless you're doing it just for yourself, and you know, it's all about timing and costings and so on. So we decided on those 250 based on what we would find there, how much of the globe we were covering, and the readership for the book too. And National Geographic, you know, are very specifically geared towards a certain market as well. So they know their market, and you know, we compromised on a lot of things on the way.
Have you experienced anything strange or anything that you would consider to be of supernatural origin?
Yes, I mean, I think we all. I think when we are younger, when we are children, we are more open to our psychic senses, and it's only as we mature and have to deal with responsibility and maturity and, you know, well, we got to be rational about life and all that stuff, that we start to lose that ability. But there are a lot of people who maintain it or regain it or can conjure it up when they need to. My early experience as a child was always, I sensed bad places. You know, to me, when I went into a room, it felt cold or it felt bad or it felt something. And it was only later that I realised that I was just feeling the sense of some lost soul or something that was not right about that place. It didn't always have to be bad. It could just be a feeling of, you know, an emotional connection. But later on, I lost that a bit, and that's when I got really back into tarot, doing the tarot and astrology, to find systems which I could use to help me relate to my lost psychic sense. So all those things started to come back, and although I still can go to places and feel the energy, you know, I can go into Paris and walk around some of those extraordinary ancient places and feel the energy, and you know, where people were guillotined, and you can feel, somehow you know that the crowd were cheering or jeering, that people, that heads were dropping, you know. I mean, it's just a strange thing, but it is a feeling. But more recently, my father passed away. Well, not that recently, it was about 8 years ago or so. And I had a very personal experience. I was sitting in the chapel where he was having his funeral in a college in Cambridge. And it was a very private, small chapel, you know, it's very, very beautifully done.
Bill standing up at your HVAC system's gone. Gillette Services has the perfect solution. Install a new high-efficiency system and get a $1,000 rebate the very same day. It's right, $1,000 in your pocket just for upgrades. And the best bit, you don't have to make a single payment until 2027. Don't miss this limited time offer. Call 385-GET-HEAT for your free estimate. Gillette Services. Comfort now, pay later.
You may think you're being helpful if you share prescriptions, that you're sharing your concern. But what you're really sharing are things you never intended. Severe allergic reactions, serious interactions with other drugs or supplements you didn't know your friend or family member was taking, complications from a pregnancy that hasn't even been announced yet, the wrong dosage for the wrong condition. So please share your compassion, just never share your nuts. Learn more at knowyourscript.org.
Bill standing up at your HVAC system's gone. Gillette Services has the perfect solution. Install a new high-efficiency system and get a $1,000 rebate the very same day. That's right, $1,000 in your pocket just for upgrading. And the best bit, you won't single payment until 2027. Miss this limited time offer. Call 385-GET-HEAT for your free estimate. Comfort now, pay later.
And I sat there, and it's a very old chapel. It's kind of built in the sort of 16th century, 18th century-ish. And as I sat there, I felt somebody touch my head as if to say, hey, it's okay, you know, don't cry. And I looked round and there was nobody there. And in that moment, I knew or felt or believed or understood that that was my father, who was, his soul was now passing. And it was a kind of like a final goodbye. And so to me, that was one of the most intimate, pure moments in my life that I can only say I remember with absolute clarity. And, you know, it will stay with me forever. And that's why I believe in the supernatural. And that's why I believe there is something beyond which we see before us. And that the
You might think you're being helpful if you share prescriptions. But you're sharing with severe reactions. A series of complications from pregnancy that hasn't even been announced yet. They're all searching for the wrong patient. So please share your compassion. Just never share your needs. Learn more at neverscript.org.
magical world is like a veil, you know, the Buddhist, Hindu, Indian veil of Maya, which is all an illusion. And beyond that illusion is something else, I'm not sure what, and nobody knows until either they experience something from it, or arrive there themselves.
I would love to jump into some of these locations. I think you just shared that story about your father. You do talk about castles. And I'm talking about castles. Europe has a lot of them. I was stationed in the military in Germany. And Germany has a lot of castles, so I'm very fascinated ever since. But Europe has a lot that are known to be haunted. Can you tell me about some of those? And another question I want to add to that is, all these castles having activities because they have dark histories, or what's the backstory?
Okay, I think there's different stories for different castles. You know, if we look at the most obvious big chateau, castle, palace is Versailles, okay, you know, not far from Paris. And I think because so much went on there, you know, there was so much intrigue, there were so many courtiers, there were so many people living there, there were so many people dying there, you know, there were poisoners, there was so much going on that it's absolutely normal that Versailles is pretty much haunted down every corridor. However, it's believed that in the Versailles Gardens, you know, the ghost of Marie Antoinette still wanders, and people have said they've seen her. You know, that there are tragic stories around these places. And I think for hauntings particularly, it's about tragic stories. Now, on the other hand, for let's go into vampires, which is, you know, more the kind of German, Bavarian, getting into the sort of Eastern Europe kind of tales and legends and, let's say, sightings. These castles were filled with different kinds of tragedies, and a lot of blood was spilled. And whether one believes in vampires themselves or in some kind of energy which creates a feeling around blood and people using blood to either nurture themselves or change other people, these wonderful stories and legends have come out through some of the great castles. Like in Romania, there's Bran Castle, which was really known for its medieval tyrant, you know, Valdi Impala. And because he was always in great wars and great fights and God knows what, he's called that because he used to throw his victims onto stakes and impale them on these stakes below the castle walls. And soon the notion of his lust for blood became very well known. It's it's now a museum, and it's kind of, they say that he drank the blood of these victims. And so these kind of legends built up in medieval times to give these castles so extraordinary kind of powerful stories around them. There's also, I don't quite know how to pronounce it, but in Slovakia I think it's called Kapitce Castle. And this is where the notorious Countess Elizabeth Bathory and apparently used to bathe in their blood. So, you get these stories around these castles, around these people, which carry on, threading their ideas through the local population and bring about these legends. Some of them may well be true. Some of these people may well have been fascinated by blood, and we know that people are. And they still do. And these are the kind of stories and legends that carried on and crossed the Atlantic. There's a lot of witchcraft stuff and vampire stuff in the States too. So I think castles are, if you like, an archetypal vision of where bad stuff happens, because they're big and empty, and they were built by tyrants and by kings and by amazing people. And so they have this aura and this energy of something very supernatural about them as well.
So this castle that you talked about, the one where it sounds horrible. The lady was bathing in their blood. Is that one in France?
No, that's in Slovakia.
Slovakia, okay. Have you visited that?
No, I'm afraid not.
I don't know if I want to.
I don't think I really want to either. What I have visited, though, is, let me remind myself, because I'm just going to have to check what it's called here. Thank you. Is the Château de Chambord. Now that's, Chambord is on the River Loire, and it was a chateau built for the various kings in France. And it's very elegant and it's very beautiful. And, the tourists can go in there and wander from room to room and look around like many other chateaus in France. And it's just a fascinating place. But what happened here was that during the reign of Louis XV, which is in the middle of the 18th century, there was a guy who apparently had no past. He just appeared out of nowhere, and he was known as the Comte de Saint-Germain. He was very mysterious because he just appeared in the court, and he claimed that he was related to a Prince of Transylvania. And of course, we all know from Dracula, Transylvania is meant to be the birthplace of Dracula and real vampires. So there was this feeling around the courtiers that he was something very unusual and very special because he just appeared just like that. And he apparently introduced the king's mistress, who was Madame de Pompadour, to the elixir of life, which apparently was blood. He then just, boom, like that, disappeared into thin air. And he appeared and vanished repeatedly for another 200 years, apparently, which is another legend about vampires, of course, that they, unless they're finished off with the stake, they live forever. But I think the whole point about Chambord is when I went there, I wandered the great salons and the great corridors, and I tried to feel this presence, but I couldn't. But when I went to the evening, they had a musical soiree, where they actually recreated a little concerto in one of the rooms, especially for the tourists. And I sat down and I thought, yeah, this is really nice. And while they were playing this concerto, I felt this extraordinary rush of cold air past me. And I thought, oh gosh, what's that? Well, later on, I investigated what he'd been up to. And in fact, I found out that he would actually perform and show off his musical talents to his friends in concertos every night. And then because it made him feel really in need of more blood, he became very cold and would rush out the room and disappear. So it was just so weird that I felt this musical experience and this rushing cold go past me. And to this day I sort of think, my God, it was him, he's still there, kind of in his ghostly vampire form. And it was just so spectacular a feeling. It wasn't as exciting as my father's experience because it wasn't a personal thing to me. I think that's the difference. I think we react to personal, ghosts and spiritual contact a lot more deeply than we do to something which is outside ourselves. But of course it can be very scary for the uninitiated as well.
I agree, but that was really neat that you were able to connect that experience with something he did in the past.
Yeah. I think, because I'm someone who's very curious, about life and experiences, and also quite try to rationalize, I wanted to find out what it was that I had experienced. And so I dug around and delved a bit, and came up with the story, which is why I put his story in the book. Not my story, but I put his story in the book.
I know what you meant.
Yeah.
Now, staying on the subject of vampires, I was very surprised to see that you said the Philippines and Madagascar had origins.
Yes. I think the Caribbean is one of the sort of places. I think it's because the Caribbean, of course, is very much a place which is out of Africa, and a lot of ancient indigenous peoples were very involved in bloodletting, in the kind of idea of demons who came and sucked your blood. So these kind of ancient legends which come out of Africa and in South America too, and all those sort of places. Of, you know, my God, the demon's going to come and suck my blood, and I will be gone. Became mixed up with vengeful spirits and the whole voodoo thing as well. You know, so you could see how the witchcraft, vampire, voodoo, all that kind of stuff kind of becomes totally condensed in these islands. Similarly, you know, Madagascar, because that's kind of close to Africa, and you know, anywhere where you have a lot of old stories and legends and myths, which myth to me is real. You know, if you are someone living in, you know, the year 2000 BC or whatever you call it these days, the myth was real. Greek mythology was real to the people who lived then, as any mythology, and myth has an extraordinary resonance, to our modern day psyche. You know, so stories from the past relate to now, and whether they are just stories and vampires don't exist and, you know, witches don't exist is not relevant. There is something supernatural out there, and it's those stories and those people who maybe practiced witchcraft, whether white or black. I don't mean that, you know what I mean? Sorry.
I know what you. I know you didn't mean race.
Anyway, whether they practice magic for bad means or for good means, they did it, and they believed in magic. And I think that's the thing about the crucial thing we're talking about here. The supernatural is a magical world, because magic is about making things happen. And if you can make things happen by drawing on the energy of the cosmos, or by drawing on the energy around you, or by drinking some blood, or by, you know, concocting some potion, or poisoning your courtiers, you are making something happen. You are making magic. So if you draw on the divine, you are making magic too. So whether you're an astrologer, a magician, you believe in vampires, you believe in UFOs, you know, you're drawing on something which is out there and you're not quite sure what it is, but you're going to work with it. And to me, I practice the occult arts, you know, in small doses, all for the benefit of something good. But, you know, things that are occult, which are mysterious, which are supernatural, which are not known, they can be drawn on in the nicest possible way. And so the whole thing about vampires, you know, and the dark side of the supernatural, they're always going to be there, whether through legend or through people believing it still, or finding evidence. You know, I mean, they found evidence of bones and knives through bones in various places near Italy and Sicily, of people who really believed in vampires existing and actually putting stakes through their hearts or through their, you know, through their upper torso. It's not just Dracula. So, you know, Dracula was